Hi, I'm Hannis. I'm going to be playing Smack Talk from Rock School Book 5/6.
1, 2, 1, 2,
3. Okay, so for Smack Talk, the hard part in this that I think students will struggle with are the triplets at the beginning, because there's 2 sets of triplets, but there's a rest at the beginning. So what I do is, first of all, I teach a student that triplets fit into the sound of banana. So banana, 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 banana is the rhythm of the triplet. Okay, next part, which is the triplet run at bar 5, because that's quite a speed, and it requires very, very strong alternate picking action in this hand. So first of all, I would say to the student about the 1 finger per fret rule. So you'd start that 4 on your pinky finger. So you would go pinky, 3rd finger, 1st finger for those 2 strings, and then just alternate between that. So there's no, the 2, the last note of that bar. But so you stretch your fingers over 4 frets and use each finger for each fret. So you would go. Ending on that G in bar 6. So I'll move on to the ghost notes. And something that I found when teaching this is that ghost notes are actually quite a difficult thing for a student to understand, because it comes down to muting. And muting is quite idiosyncratic for the player. So, however they do it, as long as it's effective, it doesn't really matter. But there are different ways. Some people will mute with their palm, some people will mute with their hand and neck. I kind of say do both. So if you can see that I've got my hand here and my hand here, and then there's no way that's coming out. So I'm using both techniques, but either or is fine as long as it works. And I find that it usually takes a bit of practice to get that down, especially at the speed. But I got da 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 da, which that quick muting coming off the chord takes some forethought, and it takes a bit of practice for them to be able to get that action and that music really accurate. Figuring it out. So after ghost notes, I think the main part is going to the solo. Solos using G minor pentatonic for a little bit, what I was playing. But I did add in some of the major third that I changed between, and I think it's a good way to come out into a bit of chord theory here about in a scale, where do you find the difference between a major and minor third. And so here we've got and how to use that to affect within this piece, and where you would use it. So we've got G minor, and so also coming out of that block shape and extending that shape further up the neck. I'm not sure that I would expect students at the moment to be able to link that with other shape up here. If they start in this shape, then fine. But I think it's a good way of using this technique of starting in a box, then extending up to here, to then link in up here. So yeah, just get a student to identify where that minor third to major third switch is coming in, and then where to apply that in the solo. And even though the student may know the notes, it's about coaching through rhythms, because this is obviously a very triplet heavy piece. It's a blues rock feel, and if you've never listened to blues rock, it's a bit difficult to know what to play and what influences are in this piece. So I also give students homework to go and listen to influential blues players, because to listen around the piece. Section E is very difficult to play, and that's mainly because it requires a lot of attention to details of your fingering and where you're moving your fingers. And so we've got, so I teach the one finger per fretboard here, so you're going 3, 3, 5 on the third finger, 4 on this finger. So I haven't moved out of position for that. That slides, so you're coming out of position there. At this point, I would kind of choose student's choice. I would slide, as long as you've got a break between those notes, but it's not actually rotating, there's a slide in there. But you can also change position, so you can go. So I've moved my position now to the first frets around here, which would also be fine and would also work. It's what I suspect that would be more comfortable for most people, but it's not the way I would play it. So I know that there are other ways to do it. So it would kind of be just looking at the individual student and seeing how they do it best. So then you've got, if you're in this position, coming up to this side, there's not a big slide, making sure that there's accuracy in that slide, that they're not shooting over the bend, shooting over the note. So, and then this is where I find that people struggle, is then switching to your second finger to play this, and then moving very quickly your whole hand up to come into position here. Because it's good technique, and it makes it much easier to play. Once you get that speed of change in, it's much easier to organise your fingers. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to keep up with the kind of pace of this. So we're going. So we've got. I'm coming from this this D sharp here, and then moving my hand so that my first finger is on the A here to finish the next phrase. And then moving my hand back down the neck to play that last lick. So slowly all the way through, I would teach it. So my hand is constantly moving into the easiest position to play around those different phrases. And it is something that will take a lot of practice for students, I think, because it is complicated and it's getting your head around the idea of moving your fingers as economically as possible around the guitar, because you don't want to waste precious time trying to organise your fingers around the position you stuck yourself in. If that's too difficult, you change position. And I think that's the easiest way to go about changing position up in there for that lick. So the final lick, it's kind of the D7 sharp 9 chords at bar 50, and this is also you've got count beats and count the triplets, but also be aware of the 3-beat rests. So you've got one crotchet rest and one lead rest that comes in the bar before. So 1, 2, 3. So we've got those ghost notes, we've got triplets, we've got counting them what seems like an oddly timed lick. So it's a really good. It's a challenging lick, but it's a really good one to get the students to count through and make sure that they've really understood the whole triplet thing going on there. So I would always get them to go from bar 49 because I want them to include that counting before. So dun dun 1, 2, 3 dun 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 dun, and make sure that these triplets are even faster than the ghost notes that have happened before. So ghost notes have been and these play triplets. So I make sure that they really use those strings quickly. And the way that I would do that, you don't have time to hold a whole hand over it. I would teach about about pressure on the string. So that the guitar doesn't need much pressure to make the notes sound out. If you overpress, you bring the notes out of tune. So you want to push down the notes, but then when you release your hand, you can just rest them and then make sure that they're music. So this chord, you've got the top finger here can just touch the top string here, and this finger here, the fatty bit underneath, can just block off this string here to make sure it's all muted, and then you just release the hand and push down, not taking the fingers off the strings, still touching the strings, but just being very accurate in the amount of pressure you're focusing on this hand. And that's really the best and only way to do this. As I said before, you could just be with this hand, but I still find that you've got it's a bit more difficult. You've still got a bit more ringing coming through because you're still pushing down and you can still hear the notes coming out with this hand. So I would advise the student to do it to mute with this hand instead of this hand for this game. Still keep your palm on there to try and mute that, like I said before about doing both hands. I really concentrate on this hand because this is what will make a big difference. So I would slow it down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, da, 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 2, 3, dun, 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 dun. So playing that 1, 2, 3, 4, 3. So just making sure that they understand how to count through that phrase, because I think it will certainly